Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Mind4Youth Charlotte Wellness Series. My name is Caleb, and I'm joined by my co host Vivian with our guest speaker, Miss Tresslar, a high school counselor.
Hello.
And hello. And before we begin, I'd like to first talk about what Mind4Youth is. So, Mind4Youth is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting youth mental health through community engagement, advocacy, and education. And one of the ways that our chapter has decided to achieve this is through the Wellness Series, which is a conversational series where students learn directly from mental health professionals, counselors, and educators through open, honest discussion. Today's purpose is to offer practical guidance and encourage a healthy conversation about mental health so students are better able to understand how to not only help one another, but also themselves. And with that, let's move on to our first question. So, Ms. Tressler, so the audience better gets to know you. Could you briefly introduce yourself, describe your role, and share what inspired you to work with students?
Yes, so I'm Allison Tresslar. I am a high school counselor, so I serve grades 9 through 12. We at our school are organized by last name, so usually I get to keep my students unless their last name changes, but that doesn't happen often in high school. So I help students with like any social, emotional, academic needs, and that can vary a lot. And a lot of times, I think people think of us as being there to help academically, but obviously we encourage people to come talk to us. Sometimes we aren't the right person to talk to in a school, but we can also be the point person. So I have students who come ask me about clubs, and I can try to point them in the right direction. And what inspired me to work with students? Well, I used to work in private practice as a mental health therapist, and I work with ages from, I think, 4 was my youngest, and maybe like mid 60s was my oldest. So I had a lot of range, and part of my job was also I was in office, but they also put me in school based mental health. So I went to a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school different days of the week to help with students there. And in doing so, I got to see kind of what a school counselor's role was because I worked closely with them. And I kind of liked that they were a little bit more holistic. So it was not just mental health, which obviously is important, but also helping them academically, getting to help them socially, like making friends, learning kind of group dynamics about their families. And the nice thing too is getting to know them over the course of 4 years and getting to celebrate their good and kind of empathize with their bad.
That's really cool. And when a student has like a really good counselor, that makes all the difference in like their school life, and it's nice that they know that they have someone there that like supports them and stuff. And
I
that's
hope
awesome.
so. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Vivian.
Okay, so question two is from your experience working with adolescents, what are some of the most common mental health challenges teenagers are facing today, and what factors do you think are contributing to them?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question. Obviously, it varies from person to person, but generally, probably anxiety is the biggest one. And it can be anxiety about anything. It doesn't have to be like just generalized anxiety disorder, but anything about school, like friendships, if they're kind of falling apart, or just thinking about their future and kind of the unknown, that stuff. I find a lot of my students in particular are overscheduled. And I
Mm,
say that because I feel like there is a lot of pressure on them to be not just performing well academically, but also be involved and maintain friendships and family relationships. And it can be a lot on somebody. I think I've maybe told you this, Vivian. I tell a lot of my students, and I sound like a broken record, but I feel like high school, for some reason, is the one time when you're expected to fill every single minute of your day. As an adult, I don't go home and have homework unless there's something that I just really need to get done for work. I'm not expected to join a club or activity unless I want to. But I feel like a lot of high school students don't feel like they have that freedom. And then obviously, when you're younger, your calendar usually isn't as packed either. So it can be a really stressful time. Social media is kind of a stressful thing, but I saw that that may be a question that comes up later, so I'll save that for later. Um,
yeah.
and probably self-esteem too. So anxiety and self-esteem, I would say, would be the big ones. I feel like a lot of my students feel like they're letting someone down or disappointing someone, and that's kind of their biggest fear and something that they have to work through or process. And I'm happy to be there for them to help and check those thoughts because sometimes they're not helpful; they're more hurtful.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. And what you
Mm.
said about the pressure that students have, I can relate to that, and also my at my school because a lot of students they can feel like they're behind compared to other
Mhm.
students when they compare themselves to others. Like, how many AP classes are you taking or IB classes? How many competitions did you win this year? What internship do you have this summer? And
Yes,
if you compare yourself to other people, like you feel like your mental health can take a toll, and you need to like control that and improve that.
absolutely.
And all right, next question. From your perspective, are there aspects of today's school environment that can contribute to student stress or mental health challenges? If so, how can schools better support students' well-being?
Oh, you're asking really tough questions, but good questions, absolutely, and questions we should think about. I think this one is tough for a different reason. I think it's tough because there need to be big systemic changes, to education generally, I think, and the way that it used to be is not necessarily the way it maybe is helpful now, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of school is lecture-based, like, sit down, listen to the teacher, learn something for 90 minutes, and then go on to the next block and do it. And I think the way that our brains have developed over time with, technology especially, we find that we're not as capable of sustaining attention, which is not to say it's good or bad, but just different. And I feel like the structure of the school system has not updated to keep up with kind of what students' needs are. Um, I like the idea of like looking into later start times because I don't think
Mm,
that's doing a lot of good for students, especially teenagers who tend to fall asleep later or tend to stay up doing homework later. And I know Viv knows that we start our day at 7:15, which is really, really early, not just for me, but for you guys. I like the idea. I think there are a lot of studies being done now on homework and how effective it is, especially if you have 90 minutes of content in a class. Is there really any good that an extra 45 minutes outside of school is doing? Or is it just creating kind of more resentment? Is it creating more stress? That kind of thing. I can't say for sure. I haven't read all the studies and don't know for sure if there are any longitudinal results yet. But it's something to keep an eye on. Another thing is like I know some school systems are playing around with like 4-day school weeks and having 3-day weekends, just giving students that extra day off and time to fill their cup, for lack of a better term.
mm,
But as far as like just things that we can do within our school, it's I think trainings for the adults, making sure that they feel like they can be somebody that a student talks to, somebody warm and receptive. Because I think sometimes when our attitudes aren't right, students definitely pick up on that and aren't willing to talk to us, and not just counselors, but teachers too. And then I think too, leadership and student communication. Our new principal, I had never seen this before, but he just started this semester and started having conversations with seniors, like bringing them to his office and saying, like, hey, what's going right at Providence and what do you think could be different? And I think those conversations are so important because he can ask us as faculty and we have one perspective, but obviously the students are going to have a much different perspective. And I think it allows students to feel heard even if big changes aren't made.
wow, I liked a lot about what you said.
Sorry,
Uh,
I know I gave you so much information. I don't know if
it's
you were
very,
looking at all that.
it was very interesting from like the 3-day school schedule to like later start arrival time. I
Mhm,
like that because students I think there were like some studies, but like as you get older, like your body feels better, like waking up, like your body naturally, like for a teenager, naturally wakes up a little bit later than as like
mhm.
a preschooler. So
Yeah.
like that would, like, and sleep is very important, and that affects your mental health too a lot. And
Mhm,
also, when you said about adults, being educated on how to better help understand students, like the mental health issues, or when they get angry or cranky, and
mhm,
I was very I really like that about, because there's a lot of like stigma around mental health about not talking about it, or like there's not enough resources. Like you shouldn't open up, but like if you But if adults are more able to help one another, then students are more open to, communicating their concerns and um, telling what's wrong before it's too late.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think some adults do get intimidated, like, "Oh, I'm not a counselor, I can't talk to students that way." But I think the easiest thing is just being kind or meeting students, like, coming in with, the best intentions. Like, when I see a student wandering a hallway, I don't automatically it's more like, "Hey, like, what's going on? Do you need someone to
Sorry,
talk
Miss
to? Like, do you
Tressler,
need help? Maybe
you're
you're
like cutting
out
out.
your."
So could you repeat that?
Oh, no.
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry, you cut out a little bit.
I know my technology, it's not working for me. But I was just saying, I don't know how much you heard, but basically, some adults get intimidated when they're asked to be a mental health support for students, but I think it's as easy as just being kind, and not assuming the worst. Like if I see a student in the hall, I don't think, oh, they're skipping class, they're up to no good. I'm curious, and I'm just say like, hey, do you need anything? Do you need any help? Maybe they're just taking a mental health break. So even just kind of coming from that frame of mind, students pick up on that too, and they're a lot less likely to feel defensive, like, oh, now I have to, fight for my right to like just take a lap in the hallway kind of thing. So um, I think it can be easy, and I think some people are overthinking it, but really it just comes down to being kind and having the best intentions.
hmm And and
Yes.
listening. Do you have anything to say, Vivian, or should we move on to the next question? Okay. Um, Question four. Yeah.
So, stress is something nearly every student experiences. What are some healthy ways students can manage stress before it begins to feel overwhelming?
Um, Obviously, I think everybody has their own kind of tricks and techniques, especially like hobbies, interests, that kind of thing. But my big ones are, it's going to sound cliche, but talk to an adult. Obviously, as a counselor, I'm trained to be non-judgmental, unbiased, and obviously, I welcome any student to come talk to me if they need to. Even if it's not me that you trust, if you have a trusted adult in your life, whether it's a parent, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a coach, supervisor at work, any of those people. Um, Hopefully, I won't say all adults are well equipped, but most adults, especially if you trust them, are hopefully well equipped to get you the help that you need, maybe more so than a friend. And I know we love talking to our friends and that they can be super helpful too, but I know friends also have things going on. Sometimes they can feel helpless. They're like, I'm not sure how to help you. I don't have the resources. So I always encourage students to talk to an adult. I always say, this sounds kind of sad, but to sacrifice something, I don't know, there's probably a better way to say it, but you can't do it all. Nobody can. I can't. So sometimes you have to let go of something. You can't hold down school, a job, a sport, club, friends, and family and expect everything to be great all the time. It's
Right.
going to get super stressful, and it's okay to let go of something sometime or let go of something permanently, especially if it doesn't bring you joy, if it only brings you stress. Don't do something just because it's like I feel like I need to. Obviously, school is probably going to be one of the more important things. Maintaining friends and family, obviously, that's very important. But trying to figure out kind of what brings value to your life and what brings stress, and making sure you're realistic about balancing it all. Because you also need to sleep and eat and do all that stuff too. Um,
Yeah,
and then
definitely sleep.
yes, definitely sleep. And then my
Uh,
last bit of advice is probably talk to yourself like you would a friend. I hear a lot of negative self talk from my students, like, oh, I'm not good enough, or like, oh, I was so stupid for doing that, that kind of stuff. But if I ever said to my friend, like, you're dumb, you're a burden, you can't do anything right, like, what kind of impact would that have? And when we do that to ourselves all the time, obviously it's also going to have an impact. You just don't recognize it as clearly, I guess. But if you wouldn't say it to your friend, then don't say it to yourself. Is kind of my advice.
yeah, and even as jokes, cause like over time it can start to feel a little real. It can feel real.
Mhm.
So like just be mindful of what you're saying to your friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, I like to, like, if it's not talking to like my friend or my parents, I like to go to the gym. I like to play basketball,
Mhm.
and that's me. What about you, Vivian?
I play tennis, and I do love to talk to Miss Tressler.
That's cool.
Yeah, Miss Tressler, I do have a question for you. A lot of students are afraid of like telling or like asking like a trusted adult because they're afraid of like judgment or like something that could like result from it. So, how would you respond to that?
That one's really hard because it especially depending on the content of the information you're sharing, it can feel very vulnerable. I will say sometimes if it feels super vulnerable, I always encourage students to talk to a counselor. Just because, again, we do have that specific training about being non-judgmental, um, and I really hope I create the environment where my students can tell me, like sometimes I'll say, "Oh, you felt frustrated by that." Like I want them to say, "No, I didn't feel frustrated. Like I don't think you're hearing me," because I don't take that personally. I want you to tell me when I'm wrong because I want to know what you're feeling and be able to empathize with you in the right way. I know some adults, the hard thing with some adults is that they have stake in the game. Like, so if it's your parent and they want you to be healthy and happy and successful, sometimes that can look like, oh, well, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I think that you're kind of maybe blowing it up and it'll all be better after you get some sleep, you know? So sometimes they have the best intentions, but maybe it doesn't come out the right way. Um, so yeah, I would say talk to a counselor. If you don't trust your counselor, then hopefully there's someone that you can trust, again, trusted adult. Um, but the best thing is kind of to rip off the band-aid, I think, and just go for it. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you don't feel heard, and that's probably how you're already feeling if you're kind of going through something that you feel somebody may judge you about, if that makes sense. So you're either in the same boat or you find out that was not as bad as I thought. They actually heard me, they actually understood me, and now I'm getting the support that I need, kind of thing.
I can tell you're a really good counselor.
Oh,
Yeah, I
thank
agree. She's a great counselor.
Viv's biased, but I'll take it. I'm bad at
Okay,
compliments.
for question 5, this is yours, Vivian.
Sure. What everyday habits do you believe have the greatest positive impact on a student's mental well-being?
I think we probably touched on a lot already, but definitely
Yeah,
prioritizing sleep. That's the biggest one. I feel like so many of my students are like, I went to bed at 2 a.m., I went to bed at 3 a.m., and then they're getting up at, 6 a.m. for school. That is not enough sleep.
it's not
Uh,
sustainable.
it is not sustainable. Eating regularly, I have a lot of students who come to me in the afternoon and they're upset or they don't feel good. And I'm like, have you eaten anything today? And they say, no, I just wait until I get home to eat. But eating at 2:15 after you've already spent your whole day trying to use your brain, that's not sustainable either. Like you need probably some food to think and to keep you upright at least. Um, I think creating a productivity routine that works for you, whether that means like, okay, I know I have sports at this time, so I need to come home and use that time very wisely. I think in this day and age, if I had grown up with a smartphone, I would be a person that would have to give it to my parents and say, like, keep this until this time or keep this until I finish writing this paper, because that would be a really hard thing to separate myself from. But if you need to do that, take those kind of measures, do it for future you, if that makes sense. And then a lot of times, I think one of the most positive things people can do is spending time with positive people. Sometimes we end up with people who maybe are negative or always see the worst in things, and that can kind of be draining. Even if we don't recognize it consciously, like if you think back to maybe a trip you went on where somebody was just complaining the whole time, you're like, that kind of brought the mood down. Um, and then finally, I know you've probably heard of like a gratitude journal. It doesn't necessarily have to be as formal as that, but even if you do like a gratitude check-in with yourself every day and just say like what's one thing I'm thankful for, it kind of changes your mindset because even if you're like having a horrible day where you're like nothing went right, everything went wrong, but you really search inside yourself and you say, well, my coffee was really good today. And you develop that habit over time, then that's what your brain starts looking for. Like, oh, it starts looking for the positive, and kind of goes by the negative and
Like
isn't as focused on that.
like changing your mindset to look at the good things in life, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I like what you said about like how negative people can like take a toll on you, because
Hmm.
that's also very that's very true. And I think you should I think you should also like communicate with those people, because like if it's like someone you can avoid, or maybe like even if it's your own parent, like you should
Hmm.
communicate and say like, hey, I don't really I think you should stop, complaining so much, or you should I don't I don't like it when you like, bring the mood down so much. And then like so they are also aware of what they can be doing unintentionally to the people around them.
Yeah, and even if you, I know sometimes it's scary to have those confrontations for some people, because they're afraid, like, oh, they won't like me anymore. That's me. I'm the people pleaser. But something I might say is like, oh, can you tell me like what was your favorite part of the day? Or like if we do a rose and a thorn, like what's the rose for your day? What's the thorn? Like obviously they're always going to have a thorn, but if you kind of make them or encourage them to come up with that positive, then maybe that will, not that you're responsible for making them think positively, but maybe that will kind of help them see like, oh, maybe I am always looking for the negative. And the fact that you even brought that up and said like, hey, like, can you think of a positive thing that happened today? They may wonder like, why is he asking me that? Oh, maybe because I'm just focusing too much on the negative right now.
I agree. All right, moving on. Um, Social media. Question 6. Social media plays a significant role in many students' lives. In your perspective, how can it challenge mental well-being, and what can students do to develop healthier habits online?
Okay, so when I answer this, please know I'm being so hypocritical because I have a horrible relationship with my phone. I'm constantly on it. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. And it's something
All
it's
of us have
something
it.
I know it's something I'm working on truly, but I it's hard because I think it really is an addiction. Like when they update the DSM, I hope they add cell phone addiction to it because I think that that's what we like. I find myself reaching for my phone even when I'm not intentionally reaching for it. Like it's just sitting there and I grab it and I just automatically go to certain apps. And I know students feel the same way. And I didn't even grow up. I didn't get a smartphone until I was in college. So for you
Mm,
guys to have like that was your only, access to technology was that everything was like a smart device, and could access the internet and everything is kind of crazy. So it's really hard to combat, first of all. But obviously it makes us be less present. A lot of the content we're consuming is usually short form, so that decreases our focus and ability to maintain attention. And I think another bad thing is, I think we brought this up before, but the comparison aspect, that is the thief of joy. Usually we're seeing people's highlight reels, like the fun trip they went on, or like, oh, I'm hanging out with my friends, and we're sitting there maybe in our bedroom, like, like my life is so boring comparatively, but we don't see that part because they're not posting that part. So the way to develop healthier habits, obviously, setting time limits on certain apps, especially ones that you find yourself getting stuck on or ones that you find don't bring a lot of joy and instead bring a lot of that comparison. Unfollow people and accounts that aren't giving, that make you just feel worse, or maybe even ones that make you feel neutral that don't give you that positive energy or positive feeling. Um, and like I said, maybe giving your phone to your parents when you feel like it's too hard for me to self-manage, or giving it to somebody you trust, or putting it in some kind of like lockbox that opens it, in the morning or something, especially when you're doing homework or during bedtime, because I think it contributes to a lot of bad sleep hygiene.
yeah, when it's like right there next to you,
Hmm.
like on a arm's length reach, you
Yes,
can just like
absolutely.
stay up like till 2 a.m. just scrolling
Yes,
mindlessly.
guilty. I've done that.
I also really like Miss Tressler. She runs our school's counseling page, and she always is like reposting things like little positive like little notes like you're doing your best, and like I really
Aw.
like seeing those because they always like make my day, and they always like just remind you like to just like like keep like looking for the positive things. And so I would say like follow accounts that, like will like make you smile or like bring you like some joy.
That's good.
And you control your algorithm. So like
Mhm.
feed the put that like watch stuff that like encourages you and not like puts you down and like, makes you feel bad about your life. You
Yeah.
know?
Even I had to unfollow, those accounts where they, like, organize everything and they buy, like, the tubs and containers and everything that makes their fridge look beautiful or their laundry room look b maybe you guys don't not 'cause that's not the
Mm,
kind you're
no.
interested in, but
It's like the one
there's
where
a lot
like
of
restock my bathroom
Yes,
with me.
yes, so, like, that kinda stuff makes me I didn't realize it was stressing me out because I was like, "I've gotta do this." Like, I felt pressure to have, like, a beautiful pantry. I'm like, "Nobody's looking at my pantry, and I don't have to have" like, I was gonna go buy all the organizers and everything. I'm like, "I don't need that." So I unfollowed that account because it was, like, making me feel a certain way about myself, and it was giving me a little bit of stress, even though it was, like some part of it was soothing, like, "Oh, look at this beautiful organization," but part of it was pressure. So even kind of being mindful of those accounts, because on the outside, I would never think like, "Oh, that's a bad one, and that makes me feel bad." But when I explored it a little bit further, I found that it wasn't really contributing positive energy to my life.
Yeah. You have to examine what's affecting you, and if it does more bad than good, then most likely you should cut it out.
Yes.
All right. I also want to say when you said about the comparison thing, that's
Mhm.
very true. Um, I know like the stuff that people post on social media, it's most likely not going to be the spontaneous moments of your day. It's going to be, the stuff that looks the best,
Mhm.
edited to be the best. So you really shouldn't be comparing yourself to to others. You should just, you should be happy with yourself, content with yourself, and you shouldn't let other people control you, like how you feel about yourself, because you should care. The opinion that you should care about the most by yourself is yourself.
Yes, and that's easier said than done, so sometimes the easiest thing to do is probably get off social media, but
Hmm.
if you can't do that, and follow, and if you can't do that, then just really think about, like, how many times did this person, take this picture to get the perfect angle and the perfect filter and perfect lighting, and, how much energy were they putting into curating this beautiful Instagram, when all I see is, like, this part of it, but I don't see all the rest of it kinda thing.
Yeah. Okay. Question 7. Is this yours, Vivian? Okay.
Many students hesitate to reach out for help because they're worried about being judged or misunderstood. What would you want those students to know?
Again, that's a hard one. I think usually a lot of students are fearful either because they have been judged or misunderstood at some point. And I really do hate that for them. Like I'm sorry. I'm sure I've made somebody feel that way at some point in time, and I hate that. Um, Again, the counselors are specifically trained. Um, Teachers have had some training about how to approach with empathy, respect, and kindness. They may not have like we have specific training where we're supposed to it's called bracket our own biases. So like I may have grown up in a certain part of the country, and maybe a different part of the country they do things differently, or a different culture, um, or they just had a different upbringing, and so I can't bring myself into it. And that took a lot of self-reflection. Like I had to go to therapy as part of my training, so I could see what it felt like to sit on the other side. So know that we are trained like that. So I hope students feel comfortable coming to us. Um, I think too sometimes students feel like they're the only ones experiencing certain feelings or certain things, or scenarios. But I can promise that there are probably other students in the same boat or have had similar experiences. So I never want somebody to feel like they're going to shock me or scandalize me in any way. But like I have, an example would be like I have a lot of students who may start crying in my office, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. This is so embarrassing." And I say like, "Absolutely not. Like this is the place to do it." And actually you're the third person crying in my office today. Like a lot of students are going through a lot of stuff. And it ranges so widely that I don't ever want anybody to think, well, mine's horrible and I can't tell anybody. You can definitely tell us for sure. I will always try to meet you where you are. And that's another thing too. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to spill all your deep, dark secrets in one sitting with me. Like, after we've just met, sometimes I'll have a student who just wants to sit and have a quiet space. And I'll say, do you want to talk or do you want to take some time? And sometimes they'll say, I want to take some time and just not talk for a minute. And I'm like, great. And so we just sit there. I might work on something on my computer. They may listen to music. And then once they're ready to return to class or ready to talk, then they'll let me know.
Yeah, I really like that. Students, they shouldn't feel like they're alone. They should I want them to know that there's always people there um that want to help them or want to listen to them. There's organizations, there's phone
Mhm,
numbers you can call,
mhm.
there's a lot of resources, and they're not alone. And knowing that you're not alone, knowing that there's people that want to support you and make sure that you feel better, that that makes someone feel a lot more better about their situation and their mental health.
Yes, yeah. I think one of the things they told us in school is even if you just listen and you're somebody that hears somebody, and that's maybe the first time they've had that, then you're already doing so much for them. Because obviously as counselors, we feel pressure to say the perfect thing or like make everything be better for you. But sometimes all anybody needs is to just be heard.
A big problem that I see like in like my friends or like students, they like compare their problems to others. So like if they're like struggling with their mental health, maybe like they're more privileged than another person, they are like, "Oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way because like I have so much to be like happy for. I should be like thankful." And so how would you approach like those types of issues?
Yes, I have seen that a lot, actually. You're right. So a lot of times, and I know that's a hard one because I know I've heard a lot of parents, unfortunately, kind of respond to their children when they've heard this, like, "Well, we give you this and we give you that, and like, what
Mm,
more do you want?" kind of thing. Not that, and they're coming from a place of like, we just want you to feel good. But if it were me and a student told me like, "Well, I've got a privileged life and I don't really need anything. I don't know why I'm feeling this way." Um, I would say you're not picking and choosing what you're feeling. Feelings are what they are. So you are feeling this way, and it doesn't mean we have to have a certain reason, or we have to be able to defend that reason to anybody. Like, you're feeling sad, or you're feeling upset, or you're feeling depressed. Like, let's talk about it, and how do we help you? I never want anybody to compare their sadness to somebody else's sadness because it's so individual. Um, and people are genetically, environmentally predisposed to certain levels of stress. Um, so it's there's so many contributing factors that I would say comparing yourself is like apples and oranges. And we're just going to focus on you and how we make you, or how we help you get through this, or how can I help you process.
and um no matter like like blessed maybe someone says they are, like mental health doesn't look at those things, doesn't look at your family
Mhm.
background or how much money you makes, or maybe, well, the opposite. Mental health affects everyone and everyone can be affected by it. And I don't think people should feel invalidated about their struggles just because their parents love them so the whole life, because or like they're privileged or something like that. But students should know that mental health affects everyone.
Absolutely, and I think it comes back down to also the way you talk to yourself. So if you are constantly saying like you shouldn't be feeling this way because you have a good life, again, you would never say that to a friend. I would hope, at least, that if a friend approached you and said like, "I'm feeling so down right now," you wouldn't say, "Well, you have a good life. What do you have to feel down about?" I think
Yeah.
that most students would approach their friend and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, how can I help?" So again, if you talk to yourself like that and say like, I wonder why I'm feeling down, or, what kind of person can I talk to that would make me feel better, or what kind of activities can I engage in that would make me feel better? Being more proactive or productive about it versus judgmental and critical about it.
100%. Okay, and now for our last question.
Mhm.
Question 8. As we wrap up, if you could leave students with one message about taking care of their mental health, what would it be?
Oh, just one. Um,
Or you
one
can
of the
say all of it, but
biggest things, everything we talked about so far, but
every
one of the biggest thing is, I think people put mental health as kind of their last priority, and
mm,
I think that's so risky because when you do that, I think you stand to lose kind of everything you've worked toward. And so, if I put mental health on the back burner and focus instead on like my job, my relationships, that kind of stuff, but my mental health is crumbling and it's the foundation of everything, then everything can topple. Because if I have like a mental health breakdown because I've put so much pressure on myself, or because I feel like I need to fulfill all these roles and responsibilities, um, then everything can fight, even if it's not everything, but one thing could slide, and it would just be not a good experience. So I think prioritizing mental health is important because if you get that solid foundation, you can build on it, and then you can focus on being, the best friend you can be, the best student you can be. Um, but yeah, I think so many people are like, oh well, I'll take care of me later. I'll take care of everyone and everything else first. But
I think it's also important to note that like when you like prioritize everything before your mental health, like if your mental health is deteriorating, it'll also like show in like physical things, like your sleep won't be as well, you probably won't perform as well in things that you like wish to perform well in.
yes, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I think if you put so much energy into school, or a job, or whatever it may be, you want to be the best version of yourself, but you're really not giving yourself the opportunity. You're already starting behind because you haven't given that a time and attention to mental health. That's right.
yeah. And I think the best version of yourself is the one that's the most happiest, most fulfilled, you know, just happy and healthy mental health.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And with that, thank you, Miss Tressler,
Hooray. Yeah, of
for
course.
that concludes our first episode. Thank you for joining the Mind4Youth Charlotte Wellness Series. We appreciate you so much for being here, answering these questions about a topic that many people are scared to talk about. But you being here, it helps build a stronger, more supportive community for youth mental health, and continue being a great counselor and supporting the students around you. And thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to me ramble. I'll do my best.